Okay, so here we are for one of our last portions of our lecture, and we're going to go over phonology, which is the study of sound. And this is something that we went over in class, but I wanted to give you some more information about it. So here is a reference sheet that you can look at to see some of the terms that you might hear when we discuss phonological awareness. So if we're taking a look at the word, um, here are some of the things that you would maybe have a student do. So there is sentence segmentation, which is identifying the words in a sentence. Here is blending, so this gives a description of it, and then the student would put the word together. So you would say dog, house, and the student would say dog house. And here we have segmentation where the student would take a word and break it into two smaller words. And here we have deletion where the student would take out a portion of a word. Okay, and here with syllables, kind of the same thing, but you're applying it to syllables, so they're blending and you're breaking the word into syllables and they're putting it back together. Segmentation of syllables, so kind of clapping this. This is sometimes a challenge with some of the students that I've had in the past. And also with deletion, so taking out a syllable and saying the word without it. And here is the onset and rhyme, and the onset is the beginning of the word, and then the rhyme is the end of the word. So here it gives you examples. So recognizing rhyme, so noticing that the words rhyme. So ham and jam rhyme because the end, the rhyme right here, is the am. They both have the am sound. Generating a rhyme, can the student generate a rhyme with the word that is given? Categorization, given a set of 3 or 4 words, students find the words that doesn't rhyme. So you're presenting words to them and they're noticing something that doesn't belong. Blending, so given a word broken into onset and rhyme, the student blends it together. So an example of this would be, you would tell the students, okay, let's put these sounds together. B-ig, and then they would say big, or you would say k-at, and they would say cat. So that would be blending. And again, this is with all phonological awareness, so the student does not see any letters. This is all just based on sound. And our last one right here is segmentation. So they're given a word and they break it up into onset and rhyme. So here, like I said, the B is the onset and the ig is the rhyme. Okay, so here are some phonemes. So here is an isolation. So a skill, like I said, these are a skill. So isolation, so they are listening for different sounds in a word. So you might say, what's the first word in big? So they would have to say b. They'd have to identify that. Or what's the last sound in big? And they would go g. Or what is the middle sound? So this can be a challenge for some students. I've noticed that the beginning sound is always easier for them, and then the last sound and then the middle sound, it sometimes presents a challenge to many students. Identity. Given a word, student selects the word that has a common sound from a set of 3 or 4 different words. So again, presenting the sounds, and they're noticing what's alike or what's different. So this is kind of like almost like a word sort. Again, here they're given a set of 3 or 4 words. Student recognizes the word that has the odd sound. So bus, ball, mouse. So they would say mouse because mouse does not begin with a b sound. And here we are with the blending, as I mentioned earlier. Um, they're given separate phonemes. Phonemes are one specific sound, and we have to put the sound together to blend the word. So usually you begin with CVC words, so consonant, vowel, consonant, and then you can move on to harder words, which have like blends. But usually you begin with CVC words. And here you're kind of going backwards. Instead of blending, you're going to be segmenting the words, and you would give them the word big, and then they're identifying the phonemes in big. So b, I, g, big. That would be segmentation. So being able to hear the sounds in the word big. Here is deletion. This can be a challenge for some students as well, where you're giving them a word and they have to take out a sound. So here is spark, and then they would have to take away the s. So this actually is something that you'll be giving when you do your core assessment with your students. They would have to do a phoneme deletion assessment. And like I said, this can be very challenging. Here is addition, where they're adding a sound to the word. So their example is park. You're going to add a s to the beginning, spark. And then substitution. So here the example is rug. Change g to n. What's the new word? Run. And oftentimes what I found with students is that this does take a lot of practice, especially with the addition and substitution of the phonemes. Okay, so moving on. So why do we need to pay so much attention to phonemic awareness? Well, as mentioned earlier, phonological awareness, when a student has strong foundation in this area, they usually have success with early literacy. And to remind you what phonemic or phonological means, just pay attention to phono or phone, which is sound. So voice, speech, phonology. And this is the ability to detect, identify, and manipulate phonemes in spoken words. So all those examples that I gave you, those were activities to show whether they demonstrate strong phonemic awareness. So they're manipulating the sounds, they're deleting, they're substituting, they're adding, they're pulling apart, blending. So this is all a manipulation of phonemes. And the phoneme, you're going to hear this over and over and over again, but this is the smallest unit of spoken language. And this is not the same as phonics. When you use phonics, you're applying a sound to a grapheme. So you're saying ah, and then you're writing the letter A. Now you're applying the sound to a grapheme. Oh, here it is. Phonics is a relationship between phoneme and grapheme. And most phonemic awareness tasks are purely oral. Okay, so here's some background on consonant phonemes. And there's about 44 to 45 in the English language, depending on the dialect. So consonants are made with constricted vocal tract. So here are some of the phonemes. And you'll notice that there's actually two sounds for these. One of them is voiced and one of them is unvoiced. So think and this. So think is unvoiced, this is voiced. And so here, this is the CH is one phoneme because it makes one sound. Okay, so voicing vibrations of vocal cords. So these are just certain things that a child must do in order to articulate the sounds. So place of articulation, location of tongue, teeth, and lips when they're produced. Oftentimes when I taught first grade, I'd actually have them look at my mouth and I would tell them what I was doing because sometimes it was very challenging for some students to produce certain sounds. So manner of articulations describe how speech sound is produced, like the B and the P, or the fricative F and V. So these are stop sounds, B and P, because they just stop. And then the fricative, if you do that, they kind of almost are continuing, and the V. So these are stops, and usually stops are, if I remember correctly, stops are harder to blend for students. And so this is kind of just give you an overview. This is all very linguistics. So you can tell the nasals. So if you produce that you can tell how it affects your nasal, and the stops where the sound just stops. D, t, g. Fricatives. V, th, z. Okay, moving on. Okay, so vowel phonemes are unobstructed flow of air. And so here we have our long vowels, our short vowels, and then we have our digraphs. So our controlled, the schwa, all are different. So this is the schwa right here. It makes the sound, go. And just some more insight. So some of your tongue positions. So look at the faces right here. So E, I, A. So your mouth is changing. The schwa is right here. The oo. Our diphthongs right here, the oi. Our controlled vowels are the or, the Okay. All right. Okay, so going back to the research, so 90% of students with significant reading problems have a core deficit in phonological awareness. So therefore, again, reiterating the fact how phonemic awareness is very important, especially with early literacy. So he argues that without intervention, these students may be labeled as dyslexic or continue to fall behind. So think about this word labeled as dyslexic. Doesn't mean they really are. So oftentimes students will rely on memorizing words instead of segmenting, which is very cumbersome. So early instruction in this area is key. So if you ever get to be a reading specialist at your school site or an instructional coach or anything, it is to the advantage of the school site that you start with early intervention. Once they get past a certain grade, chances of them catching up are very slim. So you want to make sure they get the early intervention, and also this has strong implications for parent education. So making sure that parents are very aware that they are their child's first teacher, and that they need to be exposing them to literature, be talking to them so they can acquire vocabulary, having those conversations with them. So again, going through this program and you going back to your school sites, think about how much more you know about reading and how it develops and where it begins. So I used to teach upper grade, and as I went through this program, I realized that my passion was to help students to read, and so we went down to first grade, which was quite exhausting, I may add, but here is where I can make the most improvements. So again, early instruction and early intervention is key. I'll just skip this because I ran out of time. Okay, so I think I fully run out of time again. So I will continue this on a different one.